My name is Aria Morgan, and I never thought I'd be telling this story. For years, I believed hard work, loyalty, and honesty were enough to succeed. But I was wrong. What I'm about to tell you is how I was betrayed by the very people I trusted, and how I turned their betrayal into my ultimate revenge. I worked at a mid-sized marketing firm in Chicago. From the outside, it looked like the perfect place. Modern offices, big clients, and a team that seemed friendly enough. I loved my job. I loved creating campaigns, coming up with ideas, and watching them turn into something successful. Clients often praised me, and I thought my efforts would eventually be recognized. But then came my boss, Martin Hayes. First, I thought he just didn't like me. He was cold, dismissive, and always quick to criticize. But soon I realized it was more than that. Martin didn't just dislike me, he was afraid of me. He saw my talent as a threat to his position, and instead of encouraging me, he decided to destroy me. He started small. Whenever I pitched an idea, he would shoot it down in meetings. But then, a week later, he would present the exact same idea to the clients, as if it was his. First, I was shocked, even confused. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe I was overthinking. But it kept happening. Over and over again, my work became his weapon. And the worst part, he got praised for it. Clients loved his ideas, the board applauded his vision, and I was left invisible, sitting quietly in the background. I tried to talk to him once, politely asking why he never gave me credit. He laughed in my face. "Aria," he said, "you're young, you're new. Ideas are cheap. Execution is what matters. Don't worry about credit." I'll never forget that smirk on his face. That was the moment I realized, this wasn't just unfair, it was war. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I discovered a second betrayal. My closest friend at work, Jessica, was not the friend I thought she was. She and I used to share everything. Lunch breaks, secrets, even weekend plans. I trusted her completely. But slowly she started changing. She began spending more time with Martin, laughing at his cruel jokes, and pulling away from me. One night, while staying late at the office, I accidentally saw her emails. She was feeding Martin information about my projects, making it easier for him to steal from me. My heart broke that night. It wasn't just my boss anymore, it was my best friend. I felt trapped, betrayed, and humiliated. But instead of giving up, something inside me hardened. If Martin and Jessica thought I was weak, they were dead wrong. From that moment I made a plan. I started documenting everything. Every email, every file, every meeting. I even carried a tiny voice recorder in my purse, capturing Martin's exact words whenever he humiliated me or stole from me. Slowly, carefully, I built a case so strong that no one could deny the truth when the time came. On the outside, I played my role perfectly. I stayed quiet, I acted broken, I let Martin think he had won. But on the inside, I was sharpening my weapon, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And that moment was closer than he thought. The weeks that followed felt like living a double life. By day, I was the same Aria, the hard-working employee, the quiet team player, the one Martin thought he had under his control. But by night, I became something else entirely. A detective, a strategist, a woman on a mission. I created folders on my personal laptop, carefully labeled and hidden. Every stolen idea, every email, every cruel comment was neatly documented. My proof grew like a shadow behind me, silent but powerful. And the more I gathered, the more dangerous the game became. One day Martin called me into his office. He leaned back in his expensive leather chair, looking smug as always. "Aria," he said, "we've got a new client coming in. Big account. I need you to prepare the groundwork, but let me handle the presentation. You understand?" Course I understood. It meant I'd do all the work, and he'd take all the credit. My stomach twisted, but I forced a polite smile. Of course, Martin. What he didn't know was that I had already started protecting my work. Every draft, every slide I created had my name embedded in the metadata. Every idea I wrote down was time-stamped. I was no longer just creating campaigns. I was creating evidence. But Martin wasn't the only one I had to watch. Jessica, my so-called best friend, was growing bolder. She stopped pretending altogether. She would accidentally leave me out of group chats, fail to tell me about meeting changes, and even whispered about me to colleagues when she thought I wasn't listening. It hurt. More than I wanted to admit. I kept asking myself why. Why would she betray me like this? Was it jealousy? Was she hoping to climb higher by sticking close to Martin? Or was it both? I got my answer one Friday evening. I stayed late at the office, as usual, finalizing a proposal. As I walked past Martin's office, I heard laughter. Curious, I peeked inside. And there they were, Martin and Jessica, drinking wine, their heads close together. My heart sank. It wasn't just about work. Jessica had chosen Martin completely, in every possible way. That night I cried in my car. For the friendship I had lost. For the years of loyalty that meant nothing. But when the tears dried, all that remained was steel in my heart. I whispered to myself, they'll both regret this. From that moment I became invisible on purpose. I stopped fighting back openly. Instead, I let them think I was broken. I let Jessica think she had replaced me. I let Martin believe he had silenced me. Because what they didn't know was that I was preparing something far bigger than they could imagine. Weeks passed, and the new client presentation day arrived. This was Martin's big moment, the one he thought would cement his reputation in the firm. He strutted into the conference room, polished and arrogant, Jessica right beside him. I sat quietly at the far end of the table, notebook in hand, playing the role of the assistant. The presentation began. Martin clicked through the slides, my research, my strategies, my creative campaign. Word for word. He delivered the pitch as if it were his masterpiece. The clients nodded, impressed. The executives smiled, proud. And then, the twist. One of the clients, a sharp older woman, tilted her head. These concepts are excellent. Who developed them? For a split second Martin froze. His eyes flickered to me. Then, with his usual arrogance, he said, "It was a collaborative effort, but ultimately, I led the vision." My hands clenched under the table. I wanted to scream to expose him right there. But I stayed calm. Not yet. Not here. Because the time wasn't right. But soon, very soon. After that presentation, something changed inside me. Watching Martin steal my work again. Watching Jessica smile beside him as if she were proud of being his shadow. It burned me. But that fire didn't make me reckless. It made me sharper. I realized something important that day. If I exposed them too soon, they'd deny everything. Martin had charm, authority, and connections. Jessica had positioned herself as his loyal supporter. If I spoke without proof, I'd look bitter, even jealous. No, I needed more than evidence. I needed impact. So I waited. I worked harder than ever, quietly, carefully, building my collection of proof. Every time Martin emailed my ideas to himself, I saved the server logs. Every time Jessica forgot to include me in emails, I recorded the consequences. I even had a spreadsheet of dates, times, and witnesses. And then came the perfect opportunity. The firm announced their annual gala night, the one event where every client, executive, and board member would be present. A night of champagne, speeches, and celebration. A night where Martin, without doubt, would try to shine. That's when I knew the gala would be his downfall. The weeks leading up to it, Martin became unbearable. He barked orders, belittled me in front of others, and even joked that I was better suited for note-taking than creative thinking. Jessica laughed at every cruel jab, her eyes glimmering with satisfaction. Kept my head down. I let them laugh. Because inside I was smiling too, knowing what was coming. When gala night arrived, I dressed carefully. Not too flashy, not too plain. I wanted to look confident but not like I was trying too hard. My heart pounded as I walked into the grand hall, lit with chandeliers and buzzing with chatter. Everyone was there, clients, executives, and most importantly the board of directors. As expected, Martin took the stage for the keynote speech. Jessica stood nearby. glowing as if she were his queen. He began with his usual charm, thanking everyone, talking about the company's success, and then presenting his future vision. Slide after slide appeared on the giant screen. Slide after slide that I had created. My chest tightened, but I stayed calm. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Halfway through his speech, I made my move. Quietly, I slipped out my phone and connected it to the live feed system. Something I had arranged with a sympathetic IT colleague who hated Martin as much as I did. And then, with one click, the giant screen changed. Martin froze mid-sentence. The audience gasped. Instead of his slides, a new presentation appeared. Emails showing him forwarding my work to himself. Voice recordings of him saying, "Aria's ideas are good, but she doesn't need the credit." Metadata proving my authorship on every file. Screenshots of Jessica gossiping about me and sabotaging my projects. The room went silent. Dead silent. Then whispers. Shocked faces turned toward me. Toward him. Toward Jessica. Martin's face turned red. He stumbled trying to speak. This is taken out of context. But it was too late. The truth was there, undeniable, in front of everyone. And I wasn't finished yet. I stood up, my voice steady. For months, I've been silent while my work was stolen, my reputation destroyed, and my so-called best friend betrayed me. But tonight I'm done being silent. Tonight, the truth speaks louder than Martin's lies. For the first time, Martin had no words. Jessica looked pale, like the floor had disappeared beneath her. And me. For the first time in months, I felt powerful. This was just the beginning of their downfall. The silence in that hall was deafening. For a few seconds nobody moved. Nobody spoke. All eyes were locked on Martin, his face red, his hands shaking, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. And then the questions began. "Is this true?" one of the board members demanded. "How long has this been going on?" another client asked, glaring at Martin. Someone whispered loudly enough for half the room to hear. "She's been doing all the work, and he's been stealing it?" Martin tried to regain control. He straightened his tie, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is obviously a technical mistake. Aria has been confused about her role here, and I've been generous enough to—" "Generous?" I cut him off, my voice sharp and clear. "Generous is not the word for stealing credit, silencing employees, and humiliating them in front of others. You didn't mentor me, Martin. You exploited me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even Jessica flinched. I turned to the board members, my voice steady. "Everything you've seen tonight is backed up with proof. Dates, times, files, recordings. You don't have to take my word for it, it's all there. And I think you all deserve to know the truth about the man representing this company." The board members exchanged looks. The clients were already murmuring angrily. Martin was sweating. But Jessica looked furious at me. She hissed under her breath. "You planned this." I looked straight at her. "You helped him bury me. Don't act surprised that I dug my way out." Her face drained of color. For once, she had nothing to say. Then came the turning point. The chairwoman of the board, a woman known for her no-nonsense attitude, stood up. "Martin, these allegations are serious. And the evidence is overwhelming. Effective immediately. You are suspended from your role pending investigation." The room erupted. Some clapped, some gasped. Martin looked like he'd been punched. And then the chairwoman turned to me. "Aria, thank you for your courage in bringing this to light. We will review this evidence in full. In the meantime, you will oversee the client projects until further notice." For a second I couldn't breathe. I felt lightheaded, like I might collapse. But then it hit me, I had done it. I had turned their betrayal into my weapon. Martin stormed out of the room, his face twisted with rage. Jessica followed, her heels clicking angrily against the floor. Neither of them dared look back at me. But I didn't need them to, because I had already won. That night, when the gala ended, clients came up to me personally to thank me. Some even admitted they'd suspected something was wrong for months. My colleagues, the ones who had stayed silent before, suddenly looked at me with respect. Driving home, I rolled down my windows, letting the cool night air wash over me. For the first time in months I felt free. But here's the thing. Revenge doesn't end with a single night. Follows through. And I wasn't done with Martin and Jessica yet. The next morning I arrived at the office early. The building felt different somehow, lighter, almost electric. I walked through the halls and for the first time, heads turned respectfully. Whispers followed me, but this time they weren't cruel, they were impressed. I knew Martin and Jessica weren't going to give up easily. Martin would try to fight back, call me names, lie to anyone who would listen. Jessica would attempt her usual manipulations. But now I had power, proof, respect, and the backing of everyone who mattered. I sat at my desk and opened the email from HR. The board had confirmed Martin's suspension. They also requested a full report from me, detailing every action he had taken against me. This was it. My moment to ensure no one would ever question my integrity again. I started compiling everything meticulously. Each email, recording, and document was labeled, annotated, and time-stamped. My evidence didn't just prove their betrayal. It exposed Martin's misuse of company resources, his manipulation of clients, and Jessica's deliberate sabotage. By noon, I had prepared a file so damning that anyone reading it would understand just how carefully and cruelly they had tried to ruin me. And then came the meeting with the board. I stood in front of them, my heart steady, my hands firm. "Everything in this file," I said, placing it on the table, "documents months of theft, lies, and sabotage. Not only did Martin steal my work, he manipulated clients, jeopardized campaigns, and humiliated me. Jessica knowingly assisted him at every step. I've included every proof, every email, and every recording." The board members leafed through the documents, some nodding, some frowning. I didn't flinch. I didn't need to. I knew the truth was on my side. After what felt like an eternity, the chairwoman looked up. "Aria, this is thorough. It leaves no room for denial. We will take immediate action." I smiled politely, feeling a sense of satisfaction I hadn't felt in months. The board's decision was swift. Martin was terminated permanently, his reputation in shambles. Jessica was demoted, stripped of her influence, and required to attend ethics and accountability training, essentially starting over at the lowest rung. Walking out of that meeting, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of betrayal, humiliation, and anger had finally lifted. I went back to my office, sat at my desk, and let myself breathe. My campaigns, my creativity, my integrity, all restored. But more importantly, my confidence, my self-respect, and my faith in standing up for myself were stronger than ever. That evening, I walked home under the Chicago skyline, thinking about everything I had endured. I whispered to myself, "This isn't just revenge. This is justice." I called my closest friends, the ones who had stood by me through the months of pain. We celebrated quietly, not with champagne or parties, but with laughter, tears, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that truth and patience had won. And though I didn't want to, I couldn't help but think about Martin and Jessica. The people who had tried to destroy me had learned a harsh lesson. Betrayal has consequences, and those consequences can be absolute. The days after Martin and Jessica's downfall were surreal. Walking into the office, I finally felt the air of respect and calm that I had longed for. Colleagues smiled genuinely, clients trusted me completely, and for the first time in months, I could focus on my work without fear. I remember sitting at my desk one morning, sipping my coffee, and thinking about how far I had come. I was no longer just Aria Morgan, the hard-working employee overlooked by her boss. I was Aria Morgan, the woman who had turned betrayal into triumph. But the victory wasn't just about professional success. It was personal. I had learned valuable lessons about trust, patience, and the strength that comes from standing up for yourself. Betrayal had hurt me deeply, but it had also sharpened me. It taught me to see through deceit, to prepare for every challenge, and to never underestimate my own power. A few weeks later, I received a formal apology from several colleagues who had stayed silent during Martin's reign. Some had been afraid. Others didn't know the full truth. Now they expressed admiration for my courage and determination. And then came the recognition I had long deserved. The company announced that I would head a new creative division, a role with full authority over client campaigns and strategic decisions. Everything I had built in secret, every piece of proof I had gathered, had led to this moment. But the sweetest part of all wasn't the promotion, the acknowledgement, or even the success. It was the inner peace I felt. Knowing I had handled the situation with intelligence and patience, rather than rash anger, made the victory far more satisfying. Occasionally, I would see Martin and Jessica at industry events or hear whispers of their struggles. Martin's reputation was in ruins. Clients refused to work with him, and Jessica struggled to regain credibility. Seeing them face the consequences of their actions silently satisfied me, not because I wanted revenge, but because justice had been served. One evening, as I sat by my window overlooking the Chicago skyline, I reflected on the journey. Betrayal had come from the people I loved and trusted, but I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The pain had been immense, but so had the reward. I whispered to myself, "This is how you turn betrayal into power. This is how you take control when the world tries to break you." And if there's one thing I want anyone watching this to remember, it's this. Never let anyone make you feel small. Gather your strength, stay patient, and let your truth speak louder than their lies. Because at the end of the day, the real victory isn't in exposing them. It's in reclaiming yourself. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more true tales of betrayal and revenge, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next.